Well, here it is. This is the new Range Rover Sport, new for 2013. Follows on from the new Range Rover we saw last year. Completely new model, this one. Previous generation, I was never quite sure about, because the previous Sport was actually based on the Discovery and had the chassis underneath. This one, all aluminium construction, completely different car, shares a lot with the new Range Rover. And the one thing I've got to say about it, it's huge. Like Range Rover telling me that it's only millimetres bigger than the previous generation, but when you compare it with the previous generation Range Rover, which I own, I was really surprised how close this is on the size of it, particularly at the front. But you have to say, it's a great design. It's obviously based on the Evoque, and it's growing from there, and I think it's actually probably more successful than the new Range Rover. So let's go around some of the details on this car. Differences in the spec of the car: you start out with SE, then there's HSE, which is recognised because the grille here is silver, and then you get to Dynamic and Dynamic Autobiography, the top models, and they have this black grille and this black under here, this under tray here. I think it's the best looking of the lot, and I also love the detailing on this car. Like the full-size Range Rover, it's got those projector headlamps with the sort of name around it that look really trick. Then on the top of the bonnet we have these vents here, and then on the side of the wing there's another vent. And it's really quite disappointing, I think, that these are actually false. They're purely cosmetic. It's a trend we seem to be seeing on cars these days, that these sort of bits are added just for glitter but don't actually do anything. Then under the bonnet we have, in this example, a supercharged V8. And again, this is what they want you to look at for the engine, but I'm always quite keen to take one of these off. When we take that off, yeah, now I can see why they designed a cover for it, because that's not a very pretty engine under there. But it does produce the power. We're talking about 510 horsepower in this version, 625 newton meters of torque, which is 476 foot-pounds of torque, so quite a lot of power in here. Move round to the side, and then you get to the core change with this car, the stretch wheelbase that has added this big interior, because there's one of the criticisms of the previous Sport, it was always a bit tight. You never really wanted to get a rear seat in a Sport. Front was always lovely, and it continues to be great in this car as well, but at the back, big change. Finally, there's proper room, proper seats in there, and it's really quite comfy in the back. It's not the sort of thing we normally do on Evo, but it's such a sea change with this new Sport. I'm 6'2", this seat in front is set for me, and I'm sitting in the back and I'm comfy in a Range Rover Sport. That doesn't normally happen. And this one is particularly nice in here because it's got a glass roof, and I think that's a really nice touch. It's been a huge hit on the Evoque and on the new Range Rover. It's bound to be the same on this. It just really lightens up the interior. And the other lovely detail is an aluminium badge on the side saying this is all aluminium construction. Just lovely little details all through this car like that. Looks really good. Well, we're looking in the inside of this car. There's one more surprise I want to show you, and that's in the back. Because if I press these two buttons here, there's another little surprise. This car is the 7-seat version, so there's 2 emergency seats in the back. You're not going to get a full-size adult. They're sort of up to 11-year-old. But having lived with a car like this, we had the previous Range Rover and I had an overfinch rear seat. They're so useful at Christmas time and when Granny comes to stay, or you're going to get kids from school. So there you go. It's a £1,500 option. I think it's probably well worth it because it just adds to the sort of how you use these cars. But what's really important with this, Range Rover Sport, all aluminium, 510 horsepower. Let's see what it's like on the road. There's one thing you've got to say about Land Rover. They really know how to do interiors. They're doing their own signature on the interior. The only way I can describe it, it looks like B&O have designed it. It's very clean. They're very proud of their low button count, which can be a bit of a pain at times when you're trying to do heated seats or something. But it does look good. Looks really good. And I think it's because I like the way they're ploughing their own furrow on it. They're not looking at what the Germans are doing, and I get the sense that sometimes with BMW and Mercedes they just look at the other German manufacturers. But the interior on current Land Rover product like this one is unique, very clean, and just beautifully put together. Feels expensive. Now, I've been living with this car for about a week now, and part of living with this car, where I live on the farm, quite often come back from work and just go and have a look what the stock are up to. And I like the feeling with a Range Rover. It's part of its authenticity that it can go off-road. I'll just go and show you. Let's just see if this Range Rover Sport is a true Range Rover. put the suspension on high. Yeah, the parking sensors are going to get a little upset, but they'll go out. It's just one of the beauties of Land Rover product. They do think about the off-roaders. I'm told it's less than 10% use the off-road ability. Where I'm going to take you now is one of the steepest parts on the farm, and it's like, I call it the Black Run. And we'll just have a little look, because you just look over the edge and think, you must be joking. And I want to see if it hits anything on the way down. It's just through here. Okay, just gently drift over the edge. And here we go, the test. That's pretty steep down there. Nothing touched. No, the only thing you heard was the hill descent control working. We're taking an easier way up the hill. But it's impressive stuff that the Range Rover do that sort of thing. It's got a flat bottom on this new Sport, so it sort of surfs over if there was anything that it was going to hit. But there you go, a little taste. Let's get back on the tarmac. One of the first senses you get with the Range Rover Sport now is it's not actually the super sports SUV that you expect. When you get behind the wheel, there's a sort of softness, a roundness to it, which is different to the Cayenne. I spent a few weeks in the Cayenne Turbo S, and that car immediately has heavier steering. It doesn't ride quite as well as this, but there's a sharpness just off centre on the steering that says, yeah, well, I'm a pretty serious car. I'm a sporting SUV. You don't get that with this new Range Rover Sport. There's a more relaxed feel with it, and I'm surprised with that, with this being the top supercharged model. But I do like the feel of the wheel, and you've got certain controls on here, and it all works really well. It's a very clear dash, and it's very quiet, very refined, this car. I'm already going slightly quicker than I should be, and yet it's utterly silent in here. Another difference with the new Range Rover Sport, you actually get a proper gear lever. They've been using that circular gear selector from Jaguar, and I think it doesn't work at all. It really annoyed me, and it wasn't intuitive to use. Thank goodness this has made a return, and it's very easy to use. And what I like about it is you just rest your hand on, and you can just control the ventilation, and it just makes sense. Much better than the circular control they had before. This particular car is £90,000 because it's got the ultimate Meridian sound system, 23 speaker, an extra £4,600 over the 19 speaker system. Which sounds quite a lot of money to me, especially when you got this to listen to. It's great sounding V8, I have to say, and it just feels strange being in a Range Rover with a petrol V8. If you're European, we don't really see these sort of cars, probably because the average MPG is 15.5. It's all I've done in the past week. So this is in normal drive mode, but if you get the dynamic version of Range Rover Sport, you have to go into this, turn that, suddenly the dash goes red, all the dials go red, pop that over to Sport, and suddenly you access a different sort of Range Rover Sport completely, that takes off. And it really does change the character of the car. I'm in manual mode now, and it makes a lot of difference. Also the control of roll. There is a little bit more roll than you get with the Cayennes, but it's very well controlled for this size of vehicle. Range Rovers all come with these cameras everywhere, all around the car, and I can't get over, you're not allowed to watch TV on this screen when you're driving, but you can watch this. This is junction view. I just touch here. I can go to curb view as well. Excellent. So you can record your crash on screen and then replay it while you're waiting for the rescue services to come and get you. This car, they claim the weight is 2,300 kilos, and after driving it for a day, I thought, I'm sure it feels heavier than that. We actually put it on the scales back at Evo, and we actually recorded it about half a tank of fuel at 2,493 kilos, so 2.5 tons. So it's a fair bit heavier than a Cayenne, which is rated at, I think it's just over 2,100 kilos, about 2,170 kilos. And then it's a longer wheelbase than the previous Range Rover Sport, so I think that makes it feel slightly softer because it's not quite as sharp to turn in. As I say, it's a nice trait to have. If you want a car that's really relaxing to drive long distance, I mean, the Range Rover Sport's always been pretty good at that. I've always found it annoyingly good at that, because I wanted to hate it until I drove one, and then I really quite liked it. And this one has that same sense, but with it being the supercharged version, I was just expecting a bit more sparkle to it. It really does go quickly. It's deceptively quick. You know, as I say, they're testing this thing at the Nordschleife, and having driven it, I can see it's got a really agile chassis, but I just don't get that feeling from behind the wheel. And I think actually what it is, it's compromised by its tyres. Because of that off-road ability that we saw before, it's pretty special. They insist on putting all-season tyres on it, while Porsche go very much for a summer tyre. This has got 21-inch wheels on it, and it's sitting on a special Michelin 275 45 21s. If I'd ordered 21-inch tyres on the Cayenne, I get 295 35 ratio, so a much sportier tyre, and that's why it feels different. I'm not knocking it, it's just a different car. It's a very good car. If I had to summarise what this car feels like, it's like when I got in it, I was expecting it to be like when you go to the movies and you're going to see an 18 film, you know it's going to be a bit edgy, a bit sharp. And then I've discovered it's actually rated as a 15 movie, and all of those little edges have been sort of sanded off, and it's slightly softer than I was expecting, but it's still a really good film. And that's what this car feels like. It feels like a fantastic car. So I suspect that we've got this car now, but that actually there might be another one, another level of sporting Range Rover to come. And what's that one going to be like?